as you can see in the tab itself, so first we explored data. Now we are going to explore tab, right? So you have summary option, you have other options like distributions, you have correlation, you have other components like principal component analysis and some interactive chat options also, right? Although that is not part of your course, but we'll just try to look at it superficially. So within summary we have the summary tab. So we can select summary, and then in that we can select what we want to see. Summary basically means your mean, median, mode, and distribution, things like that. Then you have the describe function also. This uses the describe package, right? So we might need to install some packages as and when we are going ahead. So for example, if it is not preloaded in our environment, it will ask us to install it, and we just have to click and say yes. Let's do the summary, and I'll just press the execute button over here. Okay, so summary for the data set, the summary function to be used, and I'll press execute over here. Okay, it says that okay, you need to install the HMISC package, which is required to describe the contents of a data frame. So just say yes, and it will download that in the background. Okay, so a couple of packages getting downloaded depending upon the speed of your internet. So let's just wait for some time. Okay, almost done. So it's unbundling the packages, and we should be ready over here. So for some of us, it might happen that the packages are pre-installed in the sense that they must have explored sometime back in base R or RStudio, and that is why they must have installed it. So it will not prompt it to be installed again. Now we can see the summaries of the data set, that is the Boston data set. So it also mentions these elements as CRS. You remember in the first installation and the usage, I mentioned that Rattle is going to use the CRS object as the way to parse the data and everything, objects into between Rattle and R. So we see 354 observations over here and the 14 variables. Quite strange, because we do remember that we have somewhere around 500. That is because by default this got activated and we have a 70. So I'm just removing this partition option so that I get the 100% of the data as one set. Okay, so that we can work on that. Now pressing the execute button, observe in the bottom it's 506 observations, right? 13 input. Now come over here and rerun the execute. Okay, now you can see it is 506 observation. So you are kind of getting the feeling also that what actually the partition does. It blocks the data into individual subsets. Okay, just maximizing this so that we can get a better view. No n is in the data. It's specifying the storage form also. Internally, it's double, integer, float. You must be knowing that's how the data is stored internally. It is specifying that also. Then you can see this is an output which you would have seen before also when you have used R or RStudio, wherein you were describing, or you were basically looking at the summaries of the data, the minimum, the first quartile, the median, the mean, the third quartile, and the max values, which basically helps you to understand the distribution of the data. This is done previously in our course, right? How to easily do that is what we are seeing in Rattle, right? You can select the describe option also, which will describe the data, or basically summarize the data, but in a different way using the package describe. Pressing execute, so we get this. So it's showing it in an individual form for the CRIM variable. 506 observations, missing value, distinct elements, all these things, right? So you can see the information value. It specifies how much of information is there. The mean information value is with respect to the dependent variable. Then you have these percentiles, 5 percentile, 10 percentile, and so on, right? So 50.5 is nothing but the median itself. That is the central portion of the data, how the data is bifurcated into two equal parts. This is 75 percentile and 0.9 and so on. Okay, so you can explore and look at all these things in your Rattle on different data sets, not only just the housing data sets, right? We have worked on so many case studies, and you can pull up those data and you can explore that. It will make life very easy, right? So the lowest and the highest, a couple of observations. Okay, so it's shown for the MEDV value also. Okay, I'm just trying to explore a bit more. So let's say I want to see the summary and the describe as well as the basics, right? Just press execute. It's asking us one more package. Let's say yes. Let me just check in the background. Just minimize this a little bit. Okay, so it's done. So just go down. So this is the same thing which we had seen, the summary part. Then after the summary part, here in comes the describe portion, and below that we should be having the basics. That is from the basics package, fbasic. Nothing, just more parameters which helps us to understand the data. So you can keep all of them together, or you can keep single ones, and you can see how it shows up over here. So it shows the minimum, maximum, first quartile, third, median, mean, sum, lower control limit around the mean, upper control limit around the mean, variance, standard deviations, and skewnesses and kurtosis values, all of these things for each of the variables separately. Good information. So basically it helps you to explore the data in a better way, not focus on the coding aspect but more on the analysis aspect. Okay, you can have a look at the kurtosis values also. Just click this, press execute. Right, it also gives you a brief information as to what these statistics mean, right? For example, it says that the larger value means sharper peaks and flatter tails, right? Positive values indicate an acute peak around the mean. Negative values also indicate a small peak around the mean, right? So it somewhere helps a non-statistician to also analyze the data, draw inferences from the same, right? Let's look at the skewness also. Right, so it's talking about the positive skewness, right? So how is a variable positively skewed, negatively skewed? The functional portion of this is anyway covered in your curriculum in the IDS course. So if you want to look at a specific variable, right? So you can look over here at, say, black and PT ratio. These are negatively skewed. MEDV is having a value of 1.1, right? So it's more like a almost closer to a normal distribution. You can see missing values also, but okay, it's asking for another package called as mice to explore missing values. Install that also. It's just a one-time install. Later on, you don't need to install it, right? This is just the first time that you'll have to install these additional packages as you keep on exploring new menu options. Once you have gone through all the menu options and you have installed all of them, you don't need to reinstall anything new unless and until you change the version. Some of the options might not work completely, as we know that the R framework which we have installed is the latest version, and Rattle is a bit older than that, right? Because any GUI will take time to come up with the open source part. So there is no missing value in this data set. Everything is populated, so obviously we don't have that. You can remove that. Look at the cross tab option also, but it doesn't give us a very great picture in this specific data sets. Okay, so just on the plot part we are seeing this cross tab, but nothing great because there is no class based data. If you want to look at a cross tab, it needs to have factors, right? In this data set there are no factors. We have not made any factors, so obviously just applying a technique will not give you good inferences. What you need to do is you need to also make sure that you transform the data, you process the data in such a way that some good output comes out of that, right? So here we don't have any substantial information to be displayed on the cross tab. Say for example, if you had gender as a variable and it would have been male female as factors, then you would have seen that, okay, when you're looking at a cross tab, you would have seen two different pictures. One for the female, what is the bifurcation, one what is the bifurcation for the male.